After transmigrating into the third prince of the Dragon King, I realized the freedom of seafood. My greatest pleasure every day was to find new ways to cook the shrimp soldiers and crab generals under my father's command. However, just when I thought I could live an unrestrained life as a spoiled immortal, the master of the second generation, the East Sea, received that day an invitation from the chief commander of Chentang Pass, Li Jing, inviting my father to attend the full-month celebration for his son Nezha. Upon hearing this news, I was completely dumbfounded, but I had transmigrated into the accursed Fengshen Yanyi world, not journey to the west. If that's the case, then in just 7 years, the little brat will complete his dragon-slaying achievement, becoming one of the 4 vanguards under Zhang Zia. He will later be inscribed on the Fengshen list as the Santanhai protector dashing into heaven. And I will become the most prominent incident in his immortal career. Screw his grandmother. No way, I have to go kill him right now. I immediately rushed back to my bedchamber and took out my gear. Drawing out half of my sealed blade, I suddenly had a second thought. Nezha is the reincarnation of the Kunlun spirit pearl, personally arranged by the primordial heaven venerable, and instructed the Taoist patriarch to nurture him well. He was born with the mission to drive the Fengshen narrative forward. In other words, he was born with a destiny. Not just me, the third dragon prince. Even in the original Fengshen novel, this kid kicked my father's ass more than once. Not to mention killing you, his son. He could probably kill this old mudskipper too. So they say, it was your destined fate. If I get killed by this little thing now, I probably won't have a good ending in the future either. Calming down, I immediately prepared to change my plan. As the old saying goes, first courteous, then forceful. Nezha has just been born. His ideological thinking is still unfixed. Why don't I first befriend him? When we meet again later, he shouldn't be so vicious as to even kill a friend, right? Thinking it through, I put down my treasured blade, instructing my servants to prepare some generous gifts. I immediately set off for Li Jing's residence at Chentang Pass. The procession was grand, no less ostentatious than my father marrying a wife. Arriving at the commander's gates, I politely announced, this little dragon prince of the East Sea, Albing, has come to congratulate Li Jing on the birth of his noble son. I bring humble gifts on my father the Dragon King's orders. To celebrate this joyous occasion, the little gatekeepers were stunned by my aristocratic bearing, my rich attire, which they dared not treat lightly, combined with my self-introduction as the third dragon prince, made their legs go weak, almost collapsing. Steadying themselves, they hurriedly paid respects. Please wait a moment, your highness. We'll announce you right away. Not long after, the news was delivered. Not long after, a middle-aged man hurriedly came out to greet me. Upon seeing me, he smiled broadly and gave a courteous bow. Little did he expect an honored guest's visit. Li Jing had not gone far. Pardon me, pardon me. Please, come in quickly. With this event, he never would have imagined that years ago, he and the Dragon King of the East Sea were merely acquainted adversaries. Over the years, they had not kept in touch. Yet the Dragon King still remembered him, and even sent someone to congratulate him. What an honor this was. I did not decline either. As the host, I cut straight to the chase, saying, last night, my father the king saw red light enveloping Chentang Pass. He knew a sacred being must have descended. So he sent me, his nephew, to present a gift to Sir Li. But I do not know where the sacred being is now. Li Jing laughed heartily, waving his hand in a modest gesture. No, no. I am but an ordinary man. How could I be called sacred? My wife was pregnant for 3 years. Yesterday she finally gave birth to a large lump of flesh. At first I thought it was a monster. But when I split it open, inside was actually a child. Truth be told, from last night until now, I haven't had a wink of sleep. I don't know if my wife gave birth to a human or a demon. But your arrival here has completely put my mind at ease. At this moment, Li Jing was pondering how to explain that the Dragon King is a celestial deity. Surely he could discern demons from humans. Since this nephew calls my son sacred, it is as good as an official certification. From now on, inside and outside of Chentang Pass, who would dare call my newborn a monster? Afterwards, Li Jing hastily had someone bring out that baby. At that time, though just born, Nezha already looked like a chubby 3-year-old. On his right wrist was a golden bangle, and he wore a brand new red cape. When he came before his father, he was not arrogant or unruly at all. Instead, he was obedient and well-behaved. His innocent demeanor was completely contrary to the descriptions of him being wild and ferocious in the books. At this moment, the affectionate father Li Jing introduced me. My son was just born last night, but can already understand human speech. He is exceptionally intelligent. Then, pointing at me, he told his son, "Good boy, this is your older brother Ao Bing. Quick, call him brother." At that, Nezha's bright black and white eyes looked right at me as he called out, "Brother. Brother." He kept repeating it. The more he said it, the brighter his eyes became. I don't know why, but I felt this name was perfectly suited for him. As if he was destined from birth to be called Nezha. Good, good. I never expected to see this day. How odd that in past lives, people liked adopting the children of enemies. Yet the process is so comfortable. Good boy, good boy. The whole process turned out to be so comfortable. Good child, good child. I teased Nezha on one side, while watching Li Jing speak. May I ask, Uncle Li, at what time was this child born last night? Does he have a fortunate fate? At this moment, Li Jing held Nezha, large and mighty. He was born in the Chu hour. He has not yet been given a name. Hearing this, my eyes lit up. A person's name conceals karma. Only elders, not parents, can bestow it. Since I intend to try reasoning first, then force, to attempt turning Nezha from foe to friend, now is an opportune moment to name him. Consider this. If I can take the 6 fairies as Nezha's wives, I would be like a half-relative to him. If Nezha dares to rebel in the future, it would betray our kinship, completely ruining his life, no matter how mighty his physical body. How could he face the shame, even if he became the great sage of the 3 streams? Could he withstand betraying his commitment? In the past, when we were like brothers? A lifelong taboo, a rare opportunity. I didn't hesitate. I pretended to have anticipated this, and filially said without daring to deceive. Before coming to Chengting Pass, Uncle Li, my father the king had instructed. This divine infant must have violated 1,700 precepts at the Chu hour of his birth. He needs a fitting name to suppress his violent aura. Li Jing was greatly shocked. His face turned pale. Is that so? He hurriedly asked around. What kind of name should be given, Uncle Li? Do not worry. Ao Bing smiled. His calm tone echoed. My father the king said you have an elder son named Jin Shi, and a second son named Mu Zi. For your third son now, he should be named Nezha. Nezha. Nezha, the baby murmured, his eyes growing brighter the more he repeated the name. For some reason, I felt this name suited the child perfectly, as if he was destined to be like Nezha. Excellent, excellent. Many thanks for your kindness, Lord Ao Bing. I am deeply grateful. Ao Bing waved his hand happily, not daring to bow. With the name settled, the weight in his heart could be put down a little. From now on, if Nezha attempted any rebellion, to undermine the royal mother's authority, and sever their karmic ties, he would not tolerate it. Cutting off the roots of such karma, he would not forgive him. At this moment, as the two spoke, a servant came to report. My lord, there is a Taoist priest seeking an audience outside. Li Jing looked surprised, then turned to his nephew Ao Bing. The new knowledge must be from the Taiyi Zhenren, that ignoble trifle. He smiled and reminded them. Sir Li had also studied at Kunlun in the past. Do not forget, it is better to invite him in soon. Li Jing nodded. Originally, she was a bit hesitant, not knowing whether to receive Ao Bing or the Taoist first. Now that he said it this way, it resolved her embarrassment. Thereupon, she invited the Taoist into the hall to meet. The Taiyi Zhenren was a middle-aged man with a somewhat demonic appearance. He wore a lotus crown, with a xinyan and fur tufts, his feet in cloud-patterned shoes, slanted brows and slender eyes, exuding an immortal and refined air. Upon entering, everyone was startled. The king master and general bowed in greeting. As the words fell, his gaze noticed the dragon beside them. The imperial physician couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, immediately recognizing its true dragon identity. But he had calculated when coming that there couldn't be such an honored one in the residence. The little dragon Ao Bing was the son of the East Sea Dragon King, Ao Guang. I have met the Zhenren, he said in a startled and cautious manner. Ao Bing did not dare to be arrogant, and took the initiative to pay respects. After all, he represented the dragons when out. Even if he was casual about etiquette in his heart, he had to be a bit more proper with the Taiyi. A minor East Sea dragon. Not even the East Sea Dragon King. Even if it was the Dragon King Algu, did not deserve too much of his attention or a nod. It was already giving him face. The Taiyi's main gaze was focused on the baby in Li Jing's embrace. I am the Taiyi Zhenren of Qinyuan Mountain's Jingguang Cave. General Li, you have born a son. I came to congratulate you. May I have a look at the young master? Right. Li Jing did not think much of it, and handed the baby over. The Taiyi took him in his hands, observing him left and right. He asked, what time was he born? Li Jing blinked her eyes. Why do you ask that too? But still answered honestly, he was born in the Chu hour. The Taiyi Zhenren pretended to be profound, frowning and shaking his head. Not good. Not good. He has violated 1,700 life rights. Li Jing asked cautiously. The Taiyi blinked, unable to help being a bit puzzled. How could a mere mortal know astrology? Li Jing felt a bit embarrassed, explaining. Ao Bing told me. The Taiyi could not help glaring at Ao Bing. A mere immortal like yourself. How dare you learn astrology? Do you know I received this task from the Jade Void Primordial Lord himself? If I bungle it because of you, you'll share my violation of precepts? Do not look at me like that. I only learned it from the Honorable Ao Bing. Taiyi couldn't help but twist his gaze. As his eyes scanned over, Ao Bing's scalp instantly exploded with shock. The sage of this morning had a vague sense of impending disaster. A feeling of being on the brink. Damn you, old Li. Untrustworthy man. We just finished giving you a gift, and in a blink you betrayed me. He cursed angrily in his heart. But then he thought. He was a divine deity of the heavenly court. Above him was the Jade Emperor. Not in the same system as this mortal realm. He could respect him, but didn't have to obey him. So he smiled faintly, striving to calm his emotions, presenting an air of nonchalant composure. Coupled with his handsome and bright appearance, he truly had an elegant, noble bearing. The demeanor of a unique gentleman. However, seeing this, Taiyi Zhenren couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Just now he had merely glanced over, but had actually used his immortal spirit to subtly probe, never expecting this minor Eastern Sea Dragon to be completely unaffected by the pressure he released. Not budging an inch, whether to speak or not, the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea has indeed taught his son well. This Ao Bing is quite sensitive. But compared to me, you still fall short. He coughed lightly, nodding in acknowledgement. This child has committed 1,700 acts of killing. His future is destined to be full of hardships. If I take his life, he will belong to me. How about becoming my disciple? Ao Bing smiled. No need to trouble the Zhenren. I am Ao Guang, also known as Nezha. Nezha. Taiyi Zhenren's expression turned vicious as he looked back at Ao Bing. You. What's going on in the Eastern Sea? Why are you people everywhere? I was just trying to take a disciple. Why are you causing trouble? Don't you know? This is a task assigned by the Primordial Lord. If you mess it up, you'll have to take responsibility. The 12 Immortals will face karmic retribution. Ao Bing's appearance has disrupted Taiyi's plan. Plus his innate hot-tempered nature. A hint of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Taiyi's gaze made Ao Bing's heart shudder with a sacred chill. Not because he could sense the Immortal's inner thoughts. The boy just simply felt that the other's gaze was off. As the saying goes, it's better to be careful, especially when facing someone like Taiyi Zhenren. One must stay vigilant. According to the original story, this person's methods were too devious. Like a treacherous villain, others only saw him as a responsible, protective master. But ever since Nezha became his student, he molded Nezha's arrogant character, fostering his unruly and overbearing nature. Nezha had committed a wrongdoing. Even the Book of Rites teaches one to take responsibility. Let Nezha come and apologize to extinguish the victim's wrath. But the Taoist immortal was so pure and innocent. He simply enjoyed watching the commotion without qualms. He even delighted in fanning the flames. Nezha killed 17 celestial beings. When the Prince of Time came to seek an explanation, he killed the prince instead, severing the karmic ties between the two sides abruptly. Nezha slew the Dragon King. The third Prince Ao Guang reported this to heaven. He did not think to mediate the crisis at Pangu's cave or the celestial gates. Instead, he brutally beat the Dragon King. This only exacerbated the conflict into a famine. Eventually, Ao Guang allied with the other 3 dragon kings of the sea. They reported to heaven again. Then Nezha had no choice but to descend the mountain. He scraped his bones to repay his father. He cut off his flesh to repay his mother, completely cutting off the water supply. In this whole incident, the Dragon King lost his son. Li Jing and his wife lost their son. Nezha lost his physical body. Only he gained an obedient disciple free of karma. Because at this point, Nezha had no home. Except for the Golden Light Cave on Mount Chinayawan. He had no one else to rely on. And you say he was too despicable? He always used reason before force. Every time he fought, it was under the banner of heaven's will, to overthrow tyrants and establish a new dynasty, like the Zhou overthrowing the Shang. The Prince of Time came to seek an explanation. He said Nezha was a minor immortal, aiding Zhang Zia in overthrowing the Shang dynasty, following orders from Yuan Shulan. If you disobey, you'll hurt your own disciple. It was simply fate. Upon learning the Dragon King reported to heaven, he said Nezha acted on heaven's will to establish the Zhou dynasty. Even killing Ao Bing was fated. He even criticized Ao Guang as a celestial deity for making such a fuss over this trifling matter and disturbing the deceased. We're just saying someone's son was killed. And you say he disturbed the deceased by reporting it. You say the Taoist immortal was wicked or not? Ao Bing felt this person was simply depraved. Wickedness to the core. But can you guess what? Such a devious and despicable person was actually favored by the Yuanshi Tianzun and was one of his most beloved disciples. No wonder the Taoists are always criticized. So impure. With the top beam askew, how could the bottom beam be straight? Of course, Ao Bing could only say this in his heart. If he spoke it aloud, that would be absolutely impossible. Airing grievances only leads to more trouble. All afflictions arise from sticking one's neck out. Without sufficient ability, reckless talk would only invite calamity upon oneself. It could even implicate friends and family. To return to the main topic, the Taoist immortal's plans were disrupted by Ao Bing. He could not help but feel vexed and resigned. He could only change his strategy again. This child has a fitting name, only because his destiny involves 1,700 killings. In the future, hardships will surely pile up. He must have a good teacher to guide him constantly. Only then can he be led onto the right path. With these words, the intention of taking on a disciple was expressed very clearly. Li Jing revered Taoism. He continued his eloquent speech. If this Taoist master is willing, my son can become your disciple. Very well, I shall take Nezha as my disciple. Li Jing then ordered his men to prepare a vegetarian feast. Taiyi Zhenren glanced at Ao Bing, without agreeing, only pushing him out of the cave. There are matters to attend to. He must return to the mountain immediately. After he left, Ao Bing dared not linger either. From etiquette to parting words. Uncle Li, our 2 families, one on land, one in water, let us stay in touch hereafter. As for the money, call it a connection. In the next phase, the Dragon Palace has no need for such etiquette money. Rather, at the Changting Pass up and down, whether each year brings timely wind and rain, relies heavily on the Dragon King's decree. Li Jing naturally understood this principle, not daring to utter a word of disrespect. Indeed, I shall convey your regards to your father the king, and look forward to visiting the capital Chang'an later. Definitely, definitely. The 2 chatted and laughed, complimenting each other, all the way out of the Changting Pass. As Ao Bing left the pass, his mood was excellent, waving his folding fan, walking towards the shore, this time using the plague to bind Nezha, tying an ominous karmic knot. His body has gained an intangible treasure. Should they wish to invade the East Sea in the future, there will be concerns to give them pause. A group traveled at ease. A strong man looked up. Suddenly his eyes widened. Prince, something seems to be falling from the sky. Ao Bing looked up into the sunlight, squinting involuntarily. A dazzling golden meteor, with a fiery tail tens of meters long, shot down at an incredible speed, falling rapidly, heading straight for me it seems. Prince, take cover, someone cried out. Someone yelled, but none could stop the meteor's descent. They only heard a loud thud. Ao Bing was instantly struck down, smashed into a bloody pulp on the spot. And what struck him down was a dazzling golden brick. The people were stricken with horror, splattered with blood and organ fragments on their very faces, unaware. In the 9th celestial realm, Taiyi Zhenren looked down. Seeing the chaos below, he sneered slightly. When leaving the mountain, he took precautions, certain this trip would be unimpeded. So he had decided to name his disciple Nezha. Halfway through, a treacherous cultivator named Cheng Yaojin suddenly emerged, unexpectedly seizing the opportunity before Albing could act. For one accustomed to manipulating situations through careful calculation, this was a variable, and variables often signified a loss of control, something he could not tolerate. Thus, Taiyi made his move on the surface, while the knight-errant secretly hid in the heavens as he approached, preparing a surprise for Albing. With a wave of his green gossamer robe, the green brick scattered, the golden radiance vanishing without a trace. Just as Taiyi was about to take his bride and leave, he suddenly caught a glimpse from the corner of his eye, revealing a naive expression on his face. He saw the waves of the East Sea rolling and crashing, with a vague human figure standing atop them. Taking a closer look, it was none other than Albing himself. He spoke in astonishment, then broke into a wry laugh. Ah, the cicada molting technique. No matter. This time I'll simply teach you a lesson. I hope you'll take the hint and leave. And stop causing trouble. In 7 years' time, when my disciple has matured, I shall take your life. With a casual display of cloud riding skill, he left nonchalantly, without a shred of guilt for his actions. On the surface of the sea, Albing borrowed the cicada molting technique, using Liu Jia Shen Yuandi as a decoy. While he himself escaped into the ocean, cold sweat poured down his face at that moment. He had narrowly avoided calamity. It was fortunate that he reacted swiftly. Otherwise that dazzling golden brick would have surely crushed him to death on the spot. Keenly aware of Taiyi's capabilities, he knew very well that when Taiyi descended from the mountain with the intention of ending the tyrant Zhou, he would wield a golden brick in his hand. Even before he could ponder further, the look in Taiyi's eyes told Albing exactly who was behind this attack. You, Taiyi. I merely wished to stay alive. Yet you sought to destroy me. How vexing. Very well then. I shall defy you. He made a firm resolution. He would surely avenge this attack of the golden brick. However, he also knew in his heart that Taiyi's cultivation far surpassed his own by several levels. With the protection of Yushi Yuan Shi Tianzan, whether in strength or influence, he was no match for Taiyi. He could only submit for now and bide his time. With this thought, he couldn't help but feel vexed. In his agitation, the stone sea trembled ever so slightly, causing Albing's expression to change. Darkness, vast and boundless, seemed capable of devouring all in this world. Albing's consciousness sank, his spirit standing upon the stone sea. As he took a light step forward, ripples spread across the surface. Waves rolled outward. A group of ripples emerged on the sea surface, while his gaze was drawn to the majestic divine tree at the center. It was a dazzling golden Bodhi tree, its massive roots embedded in the vast ocean of thoughts, standing tall and majestic. No matter how many times he saw it, Albing felt dazzled and enchanted. This was none other than his golden finger scripture, the Bodhi tree. Existing between the realms of illusion and reality, it absorbed the nodes of seasons and bore sweet fruits. I possess the power of the Tao. Consuming them grants divine abilities. The former Albing, after crossing the treacherous Three Calamity Sea, obtained a Tao golden fruit. The cicada molting technique this time. Due to the sudden attack of the Taiyi Immortal, the nodes regenerated again. The tree absorbed them and surprisingly bore a blue fruit. He did not know what divine ability it contained. Albing, with a gentle wave of his spiritual energy, plucked it and placed it in his mouth. The crisp sweetness overwhelmed his taste buds, making them cry out in sweet ecstasy. Savoring the moment, he consumed the little fruit in 3 or 2 bites. In the next second, a surge of warmth seemed to melt him as soothing, uplifting music enveloped his heart. Albing immediately understood what divine ability he had gained. It was the Sheng Zhong'er Qi technique. Sheng Zhong'er Qi. This art originated from the Iron Tea Mountain of Western Kunlun, taught by the immortal Buer from the 8 treasure cloud-like cave, to the great marshal of Yizhu. With a slight hum, he would expel 2 beams of white light from his nostrils, as if capturing someone's soul. In ancient times, relying on this very technique, he performed extraordinarily in the Fengshen battlefield, capturing Huang Feihu, Huang Tianhua, Tu Xingsun, and others. Unfortunately, when facing Nezha, whose body was a lotus incarnation without a soul, he was easily defeated. But now, Albing, Upon using the technique, also produced two beams from his nostrils. With just a hum, he could instantly expel white light, capturing the souls of others. Not bad, I have more than enough to protect myself now. My abilities are not lacking. Now with the Shengzhong or key technique at hand, who dares to assassinate me? He nodded with satisfaction. He almost wished for someone to try and kill him, but feared their divine abilities might be too formidable. If they truly killed him, it would be an unacceptable loss. After all, no matter the cicada molting technique, or the Shengzhong or key, there were ways to counter them. If he encountered a true immortal master, who could easily break through his secret arts, and beat him down, it would be disastrous. I must not become arrogant. He cautioned himself inwardly. Don't let a little ability make you overconfident. Back to reality. The sea breeze stirred up the waves, unfolding the azure sky. Gazing at it, one's heart was uplifted and spirit delighted. In the distance, a group of servants wailed and cried out, stretching his silk-like flesh towards the shore. He walked slowly. Ao Bing was just about to greet them, when he heard a mournful, anguished cry. Your Highness, how can I live without you? The prince's face darkened. Can't these people behave? They're all hoping I die. He roared angrily. What's with all the crying? This prince is not dead yet. Hearing the familiar voice, the crowd blinked their reddened eyes and looked up. I saw a handsome man in a brocade dragon robe, adorned with a golden crown and jade pendants. It was none other than the third prince of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. But everyone had just clearly seen that he had been struck dead by a falling meteor. How could he be standing there unharmed? Could it be the third prince's spirit? The bolder ones wiped their tears and went forth to inquire. But, does the third prince have any unfulfilled wishes? Unfulfilled wishes, you say? To hell with unfulfilled wishes. My whole family has unfulfilled wishes. Ao Bing frowned slightly. He wanted to rebuke them, but remembering how they had wept over his apparent death, he could see they had been genuinely grieved, showing they bore him a measure of true loyalty. So he suppressed his anger and said, do not be alarmed. This was merely the cicada sloughing its shell technique. The one who died earlier was just a temporary body. The crowd looked at each other, half believing, half doubting. So they questioned him on some minor details of his daily life. Ao Bing answered each one fluently, finally dispelling all their lingering doubts. Then, he cautioned, the matter of my being struck by the meteor must not be spoken of to anyone outside. If I hear even a whisper of rumor about it, then this prince will be merciless. He feared the news reaching the palace and causing his parents needless worry. After all, not even the Dragon King could defeat the Taiyi Immortal. Speaking of it would only alarm friends and family, with no benefit. The prince's stern command left no one daring to disobey. They bowed their heads obediently, not a word passing their lips. Afterwards, the group entered the sea, diving into the waves. Returning to the Crystal Palace, the Crown Prince spoke. Your Majesty the Dragon King, there is an urgent matter. You are summoned to the Ascending Dragon Hall for a council. I have just arrived at the Royal Elm Palace. Before I could even catch my breath, a messenger fish came with a report. Ao Bing nodded slightly. The Ascending Dragon Hall was the Dragon King's inner court. On normal days, any major decisions would first be discussed here, before being announced in open court. This time, he did not know what troubles his father had encountered. With such an urgent summons, there was no time to tarry. He immediately rode the waves towards the palace halls. Upon arriving at the main hall, Ao Bing looked around, seeing it was already crowded inside. Ministers of all ranks, from grand preceptors to prime ministers, all the officials of the Eastern Court were kneeling on both sides. Upon seeing the third prince, they hurriedly paid their respects and greeted him. Ao Bing nodded in acknowledgement and strode forward, just about to take his seat, when he heard a shrill, mocking voice. So arrogant, are we not? The young master is putting on quite the airs. Indeed, a grand entrance. While we humble ministers were all waiting, you sauntered in ever so leisurely. One might think you fancied yourself the Eastern Sea Dragon King himself. Ao Bing's movement stilled mid-motion, his expression frozen, as he glared with narrowed eyes. Just what did those words imply? He raised his head, his gaze sharp, towards the source of that voice. There, on the left ranks, a young man in resplendent robes stood with his back straight, sneering. He smiled mockingly at Ao Bing. His name was Ao Jin, the Dragon Venom Prince. He was second in the Eastern Sea lineage, Ao Bing's elder brother. This person was from a young age unscholarly, delighting only in pleasures and revelry. He loved scheming for power, a petty man who felt slighted at any perceived slight. With the Dragon King's advanced age and the tribulation approaching, many thought Guang might not make it, so the vultures began circling. Even a scoundrel like the Dragon Venom Prince had eyes on the throne. Thus, he had previously tried to woo Bing into an alliance against the Crown Prince. But Bing, as a reincarnated being who knew the future, rejected his underhanded schemes. He declined to join, for he understood full well that despite appearances, his father's destiny was intact. Guang might seem decrepit on the surface, but he would defy the ravages of the mere tribulation, let alone some paltry catastrophe. Even the Monkey King's rampage could not topple him, so what was there to vie over the throne for? Their father still lived. Yet precisely because of his refusal, the Dragon Venom Prince nursed a grudge. Little did Bing expect, because he refused this time, leading the Dragon King to bear a grudge in his heart. The Queen had been intentionally or unintentionally instigating him for a long time, seeking his grudge, resentment. This time, taking advantage of Bing's trip to Chenton Pass, she immediately seized the opportunity when he was delayed, and spoke sarcastically, not sparing the Dragon Clan at all. Either. Anyone could hear the insinuations in her words. For a moment, the whisperings did not stop. The generals and ministers were speechless. The Prime Minister pretended to be oblivious. The atmosphere in the hall became tense because of her words. For this was a struggle between the princes. No one dared to speak up and reconcile them. Bing smiled. Straight in his body. Second brother, you jested. We lowly ones. What merit or ability do we have to intervene in the great matters of the Dragon King? Not to mention the succession, which was laid down by our ancestors. He was purposely provoking the other party, deliberately using this matter to provoke him, openly and secretly accusing the Dragon King of being incompetent and unworthy. When the second prince heard this, his smile froze on his face, and his gaze gradually became gloomy. Third brother, I hear you've been practicing martial arts in the palace day and night. Could it be that you've only mastered the art of glib talk? Bing responded coldly. Although I may not be invincible yet, dealing with a few small fry is still no problem. A lame toad panting. Such big talk. Do you dare spar a few rounds with me? Or are you afraid, not being a true man? Their exchange grew increasingly caustic, to the point where they even stood up, rolled up their sleeves, and were about to fight right then and there. The Grand Tutor, General Li, and Prime Minister Ge hurriedly stood up to dissuade the princes. We can talk this through, we can talk this through. This is the Dragon Rising Hall. You must not fight. At that moment, a voice suppressing its fury came from the side. Some were hugging, some were pulling sleeves. As the clamor continued, what's all this noise? A thunderous voice boomed. What conduct is this before your sovereign? The resounding voice made the noisy crowd fall silent, unable to avoid feeling ashamed. For this was none other than the Eastern Sea Dragon King, Guang. Guang was a dragon deity, sacred and ethereal in human form, donning an imperial crown and dragon robe. His appearance was majestic. At this moment, his wrath was fully unleashed, his eyes filled with fury, immediately quelling the chaotic scene, good at stirring up trouble. When he saw the dragon's father, the three princes immediately fell silent. Silence! The Dragon King roared, bringing his sons to a halt. You're so furious, thinking you're the smartest in the world. I raised the third brother since he was little. What's there to be afraid of? I know more about him than you do. The dragon calf opened his mouth slightly, reluctantly lowering his head, a flash of resentment in his eyes, while Bing stole a glance, thinking to himself, let you stir up trouble. Little did he expect the Dragon King to see and give him a scolding torrent. What are you smirking at? No matter what, he's your second brother. How dare you lay a hand on him? Don't you even know the order of seniority? Bing's face turned deathly pale. Yet, no one dared to intervene, so Guang ordered everyone to return to their seats. His anger still lingering, he took out a scroll. My nephew has just taken over Baoshan, but an urgent report has arrived. The two demon kings of Jinsha and Yinsha Islands are leading troops to besiege the sea market. The Crown Prince is fighting hard to resist them. The military situation is critical. Do any of you have a good plan? As his words fell, the officials were instantly aghast. The five mountain seas are one of the three major sea markets in the East Sea. Aquatic tribes often travel there for trade. It's a major source of tax revenue for the Dragon Palace. Years ago, the Dragon King intended to cultivate and appoint the crown prince of the demonic realm as the governor of the sea market. He did not disappoint the Dragon King, managing it very well over the years. Just the pearls and jewels earned could fill 7 treasuries of the Dragon Palace. Who would have thought the demon kings would cause trouble? Daring to besiege Baoshan? Baoshan is the money bag of the Dragon Palace, Your Majesty. This minister advises sending troops immediately to rescue the crown prince. The Grand Marshal spoke up first. Seizing the opportunity, the chief general immediately agreed. This minister volunteers to lead the troops into battle. The Dragon King nodded slightly, then looked at the Dragon tribe. What do you think, second son? The Dragon tribe was caught off guard, stunned for a moment with no idea how to respond. He could only give a vague, roundabout answer. I'll just follow your majesty's command. Ao Guang was instantly infuriated. This fool is really just an ignorant blockhead. Of course, I have a plan in mind. I'm asking what your plan is. The Dragon tribe opened his mouth, but no words came out. His eyes scanned the room desperately, until he noticed the Grand Marshal's gaze. Inspiration struck. I think we should send troops immediately to attack and rescue my elder brother. He thought this answer would suffice. But the Dragon King asked further, how should we attack? The Dragon tribe could only stammer incoherently. He lived an idle and indulgent life, fond of entertainment, skilled in music, singing and dancing, but completely ignorant of martial strategies. Ao Guang sighed deeply. Hopeless case. The great tide leads to ruin. As the saying goes, a tiger father has no dog son. My lifelong fame is clear. How could I have birthed such a thing? Could it be true that a dragon begets 9 sons of differing quality? I can only lament this helplessness. I must turn my gaze to Ao Bing. Third brother, what have you to say? With such dragon-like wisdom, learn from past mistakes. Ao Bing pondered for a moment, then replied with cupped fist. Elder brother is valiant in battle, and has governed the seas for many years. His defenses are solid, as firm as molten gold. No matter how formidable the 2 killers are, they cannot break through in a short time. First, we must clarify the situation and judge it accurately. Then dispatch 100,000 shrimp and crab soldiers to lift elder brother's siege. Meanwhile, send another force to attack the 2 killers' lair on South Lake Island. This will force their hand. The 2 killers will surely march back to defend, at which point elder brother can join the shrimp and crab forces and surely achieve total victory. Marvelous strategy, third prince. Truly ingenious. As he finished speaking, the field marshal could not help but applaud and praise. Both were strategic masters. They could see the feasibility of the plan. But as good as the strategy was, a new problem inevitably arose. Who would draw the killers back? If they returned, the ambushing force would surely face 1 or even 2 demon kings. Who could withstand them? Ao Bing smiled, glancing slyly at the Dragon Prince's son. Second brother's martial skill is unmatched. His valor renowned across the ranks. He could surely handle them alone. In that moment, the Dragon Prince's face flushed red with anger. With his brutish appearance, not a chance he has that ability. Even if he did, he could not withstand 2 demon kings. Ao Bing, I didn't think someone as thick-browed as you could be so devious. He hastily deflected to Ao Guang. Father King, do not listen to his nonsense. I cannot possibly do this task. Cannot, or will not? Ao Bing asked nonchalantly, his tone light and casual. Elder brother, the gold-silver treasure mountain has earned our palace much wealth. Not a small portion has gone to second brother's expenses over the years. Now that elder brother is in peril, second brother turns his back, unwilling to save him. He would not even help his own kin. The Dragon Prince was nearly enraged to madness by Ao Bing digging this hole for himself, and then leaping into it himself. You proposed this plan, so you shall execute it. If whoever proposed something had to solve it themselves, who would dare offer strategies? The 2 princes were at an impasse, neither willing to back down. The ministers on the left and right, seeing the situation, could not help glancing at each other, yet dared not casually interject. Ao Bang shook his head in silence. It was simply 2 heads on 1 neck. He wished he could crush these unfilial sons on the spot. Other sons brought glory to the family, yet his own nearly became as foolish as dogs. Their palms were always full of flesh, leaving him utterly helpless. But he could not bring himself to silence them. The two princes snorted coldly, glaring at each other. Then both turned their heads away. Ao Guang frowned deeply and directly ordered the second son, "You lead 50,000 troops and attack the treacherous Hongdai general. The third son shall lead 7,000 dragon soldiers to ambush Southern Lake Island. Be extremely cautious." "On what grounds is this?" Ao Bing was reluctant. "The strategy was my design, yet the dangerous task falls on my shoulders again." "Does my face bear the words tragically fated?" Ao Guang, being Ao Bing's father, of course knew his son's temperament. "With your bearish appearance, how could I entrust you with important matters? But since you ask on what grounds, let me answer you properly. On the grounds that I am the Dragon King of the East Sea. On the grounds that I am your father." Ao Bing was rendered speechless. In ancient times, there was a crime, known as the 10 unpardonable evils. Meaning there were 10 grave sins that could not be forgiven or pardoned. Among these 10 evils, the Jade Dragon Third Prince once set fire to the Dragon Palace. An unforgivable offense. The then Dragon King of the West Sea, Ao Ran, reported him to the Celestial Court. With force of arms, the Jade Emperor directly ordered him to be hung outside the Southern Heaven Gate, to be drawn and quartered. From this it can be seen that assaulting parents or sovereigns is one of the 10 unpardonable grave sins. Now that the Dragon King invokes his authority, if you dare disobey, it would be assault. You can only accept the order, rolling your eyes in complaint. Being a father is indeed formidable. No wonder everyone wants to be a Dragon King. The higher the rank, the more it crushes people. Ao Bing was nearly enraged to the point of fainting. He grabbed his sword and smashed it towards Ao Bing. "If you have any more nonsense to say, wait until you become a father yourself." Ao Bing caught the sword, waved his hand and left, leaving only his tall silhouette. For now, he had no plans to marry and have children. He felt free and unrestrained, utterly carefree and joyful. However, he should not dwell on this matter now. Aiding his elder brother in breaking the siege was the priority. Thereupon he returned to the Yulin Palace and ordered his armor and weapons to be brought forth. He dressed and armed himself properly. It was seen that he wore a snow-white dragon robe embroidered with auspicious clouds, a white brocade armor with coiled dragon patterns. The marten yearned to don the 8 treasure chest. The panda hid from the storm. With righteous spirit, his cold gaze shot forth divine radiance like lightning. The people all called him the Third Prince. The azure dragon subdued the sea, steadying the east. He gazed at his reflection in the mirror, Ao Bing nodding in satisfaction. A servant presented him a gleaming silver lance and led forth a water-treading beast. Ao Bing took up the silver lance. Mounting the water beast, he arrived at the great camp outside the Dragon Palace, mustering 7,000 dragon soldiers and commanders. These were elite forces of the Eastern Sea. No common shrimp soldiers or crab warriors, comprised instead of pythons, marine serpents, sea monsters, and the like. Their formidable might needed no explanation. Leading the army forth, he dared not delay on the road. After several days, they arrived at South Lake Island. South Lake Island was a seafloor atoll, crisscrossed with passages inside, complex and convoluted, easy to defend but hard to attack. A commander riding a seahorse inquired of the Crown Prince, "When shall we prepare to seize it?" Ao Bing yawned, ordering Zhu Hai to approach. The dragon soldiers immediately unfurled a map. Hanging it before his eyes, he gazed at it, stunned, seeing the path from Baoshan to South Lake Island passed directly through a strait. A plan formed in his mind. The Crown Prince commands 3,000 troops to ambush. Yang Gong shall take the remaining 4,000 and Sun Wu, lying in wait in the strait. None shall dare resist. The commanders did not hesitate, plunging their dragon steeds into the waves, fiercely assaulting the island. Meanwhile, Long Du led 100,000 shrimp and crab soldiers, advancing slowly, sluggish and meandering. Neither rushed nor hasty. Ao Guang was already advanced in years, soon to face the third tribulation. Whether he would survive remained to be seen. If he did take the throne of the Dragon King, he would likely become the next Dragon King of the Eastern Sea. But the rule was to defeat rivals from the 4 seas. So to ascend the throne, he first had to eliminate this older brother, the Demon Prince. How opportune then, that the demons were now invading South Lake Island. He could besiege and slay them, a chance that came but once in a millennium. If he could just delay a little while longer, His brother's life would be in peril. His gaze wandered, piercing through the vast ocean, to the bloody battle where the demon prince fought. He could not help but curve his lips in a smile. "Little prince, have you had your fill yet? Let us depart swiftly." Long Du grinned smugly, but the marshal's brow furrowed in dread. He urgently asked, "From the Dragon Palace to Baoshan is but 4 days' march at most." Yet the Prince Regent took 7. One moment claiming the troops were weary, the next claiming the troops were weary, then saying they should scout less often. Advancing and halting, just pitching camp each time took half a day. They were all veteran spiritual beings. Just a few steps, how could they be so fatigued? So he had urged them forwards many times already. But each time the Dragon Prince just sweet-talked him. This time he would not indulge him further. Urge, urge, urge. What's with all this urging? The Crown Prince has his own plans. No need for you to fret. But the Marshal saw his chance, opening his mouth, preparing to say something, yet considering the gulf in their ranks, he could only hang his head despondently. After all, they were both of the Dragon King's lineage. What right did he have to meddle in their heavenly affairs? Vast ominous clouds loomed overhead, black and oppressive in their gloom, pressure mounting layer upon layer. Huge whirlpools churned on the ocean surface, spiraling into vast maelstroms spanning hundreds of li. With enraged fierce winds and rains, towering waves crashing, innumerable golden sands simmering, fish and shrimp thrashing, clashing together in one place. For a moment, the clamor shook heaven and earth, as if to dye the clouds beyond the ninth heaven with blood. The very sea was stained a reddish-black hue. To where? The main force, under a dragon banner. The demon prince rode in a dragon chariot, grasping a lance and halberd. With an urgent look he inquired, having battled the demons for scores of days without reinforcement, and observing the Gold Sand and Silver Sand brothers, aided by divine treasures, were exceptionally ferocious. If this dragged on further, not just his duty to guard the sea, but his very life could be in peril. In his agitation, amidst the battlefield, suddenly 2 sword gleams, black and white, flashed. The sword lights thrust forward ferociously, like twin bolts of lightning leaving long trailing wakes. Seen from afar, they seemed azure dragons plunging into the ocean, or meteors streaking past the crowd. Whatever their radiance touched was cleaved cleanly in two. The demon prince's face changed, hastily wheeling his dragon chariot, fighting while retreating. Seeing this, the Gold Sand and Silver Sand kings burst into raucous laughter. The so-called Crown Prince of the Eastern Sea, with no divine blade, can only cower and scurry, no different from a rat. The two bantered and joked among themselves, paying no heed to the Dragon Palace of the Eastern Sea. In fact, a minor demon had come to report an urgent matter. Dreadful news, great kings. The 9 dragon legions besiege our South Lake Island. They are about to breach the defenses. Hearing of the attack on South Lake Island, the Silver Sand King's rage knew no bounds. We brothers have always been the strongest. Yet now someone dares to challenge me. He ground his teeth in rage, his chest puffed out with fury. He hastily summoned his divine blade. "Brother, allow me. I shall lead troops back to South Lake Island, and take the Dragon Palace's Crown Prince's head." Calmer than his rash brother, the Gold Sand King did not seem overly impulsive, but reminded him, "Our master once said, 'We brothers, united we live, divided we perish.' We cannot act alone." "Oh Pa, what does the master know at a time like this?" The Silver Sand King was utterly unreasonable, pacing about in a fury on the spot. "The master's words are not set in stone. Besides, we brothers have acted separately before." I remained as calm as ever. Xingsha fell silent at once, her expression filled with struggle. Yinsha's build was sturdy. She could not help but urge her brother again, "Elder brother." The warrior's countenance changed in the blink of an eye. "When it must be done, do it. Do not hesitate." Those words seemed to be the last straw that broke him. Jinsha's expression finally relaxed somewhat. "Very well, then you shall lead 4,000 aquatic soldiers and horses to go forth first, and I shall hand over the Sun Blade to you as well." Upon hearing this, Yinsha was greatly alarmed. The two of them were gifted with extraordinary talents, from the ancient divine beasts, their bloodlines imbued with gold and silver. One of them had attained the cultivation of a trader, and was gifted the Sun and Moon twin blades, whose edges were exceptionally sharp. When unleashed, they could manifest as black and white sword lights, slicing through gold and jade, unrivaled and supreme. With these yin and yang blades, the two brothers conquered vast territories and earned the title of the Golden and Silver Scourges. Now, laying siege to the sea city, their military might was formidable, but without the treasured blades to aid them, how could the whales and sharks hope to subdue the demon prince? Elder brother, if you give me the sun blade, will you not be putting yourself in grave danger? Jin Sha laughed heartily, not concerned in the slightest. Dear brother, the demon realm has already been terrified by the 5 elders. On the battlefield, they have always fled from us. Moreover, I am the elder brother, and you are the younger. How could an elder brother not look after his younger sibling? Just go swiftly and return quickly. As for me, I will be perfectly fine. With those words, and a respectful bow, their affection and care for each other was laid bare. Yin Sha was so moved that his eyes turned red. Hot tears welled up. The brotherly love between them was so passionate, it made one's head spin. After a tender moment, it was truly cringe-worthy. Yin Sha then took the yin and yang twin blades and swiftly mustered his troops to depart. With him gone and no divine weapon to exert control, the pressure on the 5 mountains diminished greatly. Indeed, just as Jin Sha had anticipated, the demon realm had suffered many casualties and lost all courage. Without the vanguard forces, they dared not launch a counterattack, and so the battlefield became placid for a time. In the water surrounding southern Lake Island, Ao Bing had his dragon troops and generals lying in ambush on both sides. They had been stationed there for 2 full days and nights. During that time, he had led his forces in repeated assaults, coming close to breaching the city walls several times, only to be forcefully driven back each time. The reason was simple: to create distress, sword clashes, and bloodshed, life hanging by a thread. The pressure of life and death could not be overstated. The defending troops on the island, his repeated frights left people's hearts palpitating with fear. Even those merely dispatched to call for help came in waves of 7 or 8 to urge Jin and Yin's swift return. Ao Bing let them all pass unhindered. But these panicked messengers naturally clashed with the returning Silver Sand King. Just as it began, Silver Sand paid it no mind at first, only urging his troops to hasten. But as wave after wave came crashing, the situation shown above grew more perilous with each passing moment, as if South Lake Island would shatter any second. The Silver Sand King could no longer remain idle. He privately said South Lake Island's peril was grave, and his brother could not protect himself. I must return swiftly. His troops now moved too sluggishly. Better to abandon them for now and press on alone first. Alas, his luck had run out. Lacking even a mind, he fell into the trap, thinking the twin yin-yang swords made him invincible. Little did he know, Ao Bing had already laid an ambush for the crown prince at the strait. There seems to be movement in the strait. The sudden reminder forced the impatient Ao Bing to open his eyes, stretching lazily, letting out a yawn. After all this waiting, he's finally here. He climbed up the reef, peering down from the edge. He saw a gigantic silver shark swimming rapidly, tail thrashing. Its speed was astonishingly fast. Chuckling to himself, Ao Bing immediately gave the order, "Surround him at once. Dead or alive, it matters not." As the words left his lips, his minions swiftly signaled, and in an instant, bang, bangs thundered like bubbles bursting. Dragon fins beat the waters as thousands charged into the sea. Waves roiled furiously, roaring tides crashed like an avalanche, shaking one's guts with dread and ending. On both shores of the strait, the Silver Sand King stopped swimming. He assumed human form, looking around in panic. He found himself surrounded by floating ice on all sides. Trapped, unable to advance or retreat, he could not help but ask, "Who dares encircle me so brazenly?" Ao Bing, in the form of a sea beast, responded boldly, "I am the 3rd prince of the East Sea Dragon Palace, Ao Bing, you fiendish devil, for stirring unrest in my realm. If you lack sacred weapons to counter mine, then swiftly surrender, tyrant. What else do you wait for?" Hearing he was the 3rd prince, the Silver Sand King's expression softened. He laughed, "So you're just a little dragon from the Dragon Palace? I did not even notice you. Insignificant worm. What can you possibly do to me?" "The Demon Prince, I still did not realize you are but a puny little dragon. How can you threaten me?" He then drew the 2 divine swords, Taiyin and Taiyang, and flung them into the air, calling out yin and yang in discord. History erupted. The swords transformed into black and white rays of light, swift as wind and lightning. They shot forth from thin air. Unchanging in their brilliance, they arrived in the blink of an eye. A dragon general bravely took the lead, protecting the great crown prince. My prince raised his blade, striking down with force. The clang of clashing metal rang out momentarily. The blade shattered, the man died. The dragon general could not even withstand a single round. He was cut in two. Then came the light, undeterred by the flying rain of blood. Still it charged onward, rushing towards aping to kill him. Its fierce radiance harbored an unmatched might, making one's hair stand on end, counting down one's final breaths. The mighty third prince. At this critical moment, his heart raced yet remained steady. He flung out the bright silver lance in his hand. Lance and sword collided, both shattered into two pieces. But aping seized this chance to catch his breath, using the cicada molting spell to slip away unnoticed, leaving only his physical form behind, a mere illusion. His azure beast Mao was slain by the brilliant sword. The greeter of Death King roared with laughter. You think you have won? But here, you are surrounded by me. Do you not realize it is I who have surrounded you? He said, controlling his flying swords, about to unleash a great slaughter. Yet at that moment, a cold snort resounded like a divine bell's ringing, shaking one's very soul. Then, two white rays descended swifter than lightning from the heavens, locking onto their target's souls. The enemy's spirit essence immediately lost control, drawn away by the brilliant light. The person fell into a dazed stupor, collapsing to the ground. Seize them. Alping's expression turned grim, appearing in the sky. His gaze fell upon the Silver Silk King, unable to conceal his rising anger. An ambush, leaving him the first to suffer losses. His 6 damaged divine weapons, even his steed slain. How vexing! The arrogant Silver Silk King never imagined this day would come, but that was precisely why. Those who are born must die. After years of struggle, dragon soldiers brought forth shackles, first binding him with spirit-sealing chains. Others retrieved the Taiyin and Taiyang swords dropped by the prince. Ao Bing received the precious sword. He channeled his spiritual power, trying to explore its secrets. But to his surprise, the divine blade hummed and trembled, refusing to yield to his powerful will. He couldn't help but nod in acknowledgement. For in this world, all divine treasures, save the sword, have secret incantations to unlock their power. Like the heaven-overturning seal of Guangkengzi, the yin-yang mirror of Chijinzi. Only by passing down the incantation and method can disciples unleash their full might. As for the yin-yang twin swords, one black and one white, their blades are razor-sharp, able to cleave even his bright silver lance with ease. It is clear that the Bai family's divine weapons can rival those of Mu Ren and Wu Guojian, yet the specific incantations to unleash their power. He must ask the Silver Sand King. But would he truly reveal them? Ao Bing doubted it. Fortunately, he was in no hurry to inquire, instead guiding his spiritual sense into the Sea of Souls. His recent brush with the flying sword had nearly cost him his life. Based on past experience, some spiritual fruit must have been born. The divine tree absorbing the celestial breath, but not yet producing its spiritual fruit. He wondered what power it would grant. Ao Bing's heart raced with anticipation as he opened his eyes, finding himself standing beneath the tree, gazing upward. Indeed, there hung a crimson fruit among the golden, glistening branches, eye-catching. Without hesitation, he leapt up and plucked it, placing it in his mouth. The next second, a warm, melting sensation washed over him. A sweet taste flooded his heart. Ao Bing immediately recognized the power it had granted. He could not conceal his look of profound delight. For this new ability was of no small consequence, able to alter his fate, even that of the entire dragon clan. It was called the 9 Celestial Breaths, one of the 36 heavenly powers of the ancient era. The true path of the golden elixir, the immortal celestial Tao. By cultivating this power, breathing in and out 9 times, one could refine a strand of pure, transcendent Taoist spiritual power. Given time, one could even become an immortal celestial with a divine body. It sounded incredible. Listeners may think it baffling gibberish, unclear on the details, so allow me to explain further. This is the path of cultivation, transcending realms, from the mundane to the divine, from low to high, mortal, immortal, celestial immortal, terrestrial immortal, celestial immortal, true immortal, golden immortal, great golden immortal, and the supreme primordial golden immortal. Mortals like Zhang Guofeng, Li Jingxiang, and Zhang Ziya cultivate inner power, but cannot transcend mortality, only attaining worldly fame and fortune before departing the mundane realm. Immortal cultivators, however, can achieve longevity, living for over 7,000 years by reaching this Tao, a lifespan exceeding 7,000 years. The immortal fruit of immortality is akin to that of the four sea dragon races. Their longevity can reach 18,600 years. But if one can attain the earth immortal fruit, the situation would be different. One could truly coexist with the heavens and cultivate the earth. And if the celestial immortal fruit cracks open slightly, the earth immortal is supreme. Naturally, it would be even more formidable. In this realm, the universe, there is constant birth and death, cycles of reincarnation, beginnings and endings. But the celestial immortal palace, if I could attain it, I could then transcend beyond the three realms, no longer bound by the five elements. If we liken the world to a fist, the longevity of a celestial immortal has already leapt beyond the circle. It is said the universe will ultimately come to an end, but a celestial immortal's life has no end. This is the truth. Online, such as the true immortal, golden immortal, and so on. Upon reaching such lofty heights, their destinies are no longer a concern. What they must truly face are the myriad tribulations between heaven and earth. Ao Bing has now attained the suppression of the 9 breaths, equal to possessing the true way of the celestial immortal. In the future, upon forming his immortal body, he will transcend the 3 realms, no longer bound by the 5 elements. When the world is destroyed, I shall not be destroyed. Is that not joyous? And as a member of the dragon race, he possesses the way of the celestial immortal. What that implies need not be said. It is akin to a small nation, possessing nuclear weapons, even if they lack any voice in the international community. Having said so much, some may feel it is an exaggeration. For if celestial immortals were truly so precious, how could myriad immortals come to court the founder of Tongtian? Yet in truth, the myriad immortals coming to court only proves the founding patriarch is extraordinarily powerful. His disciples are simply too formidable, worthy of opening the celestial path. But it does not prove celestial immortals are not precious. On the contrary, the Jade Void primordial celestial worthy of the Chan sect, equal to Tongtian, lived for so many years, yet only regarded the 12 golden immortals as his representatives, boasting of them proudly. That is to say, even if the primordial celestial worthy's disciples were unexceptional, his perspective could not be so narrow, right? A man like him regards the golden immortals as representatives, not to mention those 2 levels below, the celestial immortals. Could they not be precious? In summary, in short, the importance of Ao Bing suppressing the 9 breaths can change the position of the dragon race in the 3 realms. If the dragon race truly produces a celestial immortal, the ranks within the race would no longer be limited to just the 4 sea dragon kings. Continuing to rise higher would also be possible. Of course, no matter how the situation develops, no matter how the situation unfolds, we remain the loyal servants of the celestial Lord Haoshan. If it rains from the heavens, we shall hold an umbrella for Haoshan. If there is food on the earth, we shall pave the way for Haoshan. Never shall we harbor a second thought or waver in our allegiance to the celestial Lord. After cultivating the Tao's mystical arts, Ao Bing assimilated the profound powers, then secretly circulated the 9 streams Fuxi technique to refine his energy. Indeed, within just 9 breaths of inhalation and exhalation, a strand of pure Taoist power emerged within his body. Compared to his previous flying dragon ascending technique, this time, the Taoist powers far surpassed in quality. Ao Bing estimated that if he converted all his powers, he could defeat 2 of his current selves with ease. Excellent, excellent. This mystical art is indeed profound. He nodded in satisfaction, longing to cultivate and convert his powers at once. But considering they were amidst a battlefield, he could not act rashly. Thus he reluctantly refrained, regretfully pursing his lips. At that moment, a dragon soldier approached with cupped fists, inquiring, "Prince, I have subdued the Silver Sand King, but he remains unconscious and unresponsive. How shall we deal with him?" Ao Bing pondered for a moment. The Silver Sand King's yin-yang twin blades were formidably powerful, yet without the incantation, he could not wield them. Since they had a moment of respite now, he might as well question the Silver Sand King. "Bring him here first. The prince has questions for him." The dragon soldiers obeyed, carrying the Silver Sand King before him. Ao Bing let out a cold snort, unleashing a white light to bind the other's soul. The Silver Sand King's spirit returned, rousing him to consciousness. But the first words from his awakened lips caused Ao Bing's face to darken with anger. "You cursed eel demon! What devilish sorcery did you use?" "No need for that, my lord." In an instant, 7 or 8 blades were pressed against the Silver Sand King's neck, as if he would be sliced into mincemeat should he continue with his disrespect. The rugged Silver Sand King, though inwardly aware of his peril, did not speak further insults. He merely glared menacingly at the prince. Ao Bing smiled faintly, without arrogance or disdain. Instead, he asked gently, "Do you wish to live or die?" "Live or die?" The Silver Sand King was taken aback, finding the question almost laughable. "If I could live, who would choose death?" Ao Bing nodded in satisfaction. Indeed, loyal subjects are countless in this world. He merely feared encountering treachery and betrayal. "Since you feel this way, tell me all that you know." The Silver Sand King glared at him, his neck bound by shackles, forcing him to raise his head to see the monkey. The prince waited for a long time, but the man did not make a sound, gradually becoming impatient in his heart. With a glance upwards, his gaze turned cold. "Will you speak or not? What do you want me to say?" "Well, ask then," Yinsha replied inexplicably. "Because it's been itching. I even feel a tinge of soreness." Ao Bing was instantly speechless. This kid is so dense. Do I have to spell it out clearly? What is the incantation for the yin-yang twin blades? At the mention of the incantation, Yinsha lied brazenly, glaring angrily. "So you covet my magic weapon?" Heh. The prince could not help but ponder, a bit defeated by the other's naivety. As the saying goes, in battle between two armies, each pursues its own interests. For the loser, not to mention magic weapons, even his own life belongs to others. And now I am the defeated general. What else do you have that belongs to you? Yinsha glared, temporarily speechless. The twin blades were in someone else's hands, and he himself was captured. His life or death was for the other to decide. As the loser, he had nothing left that belonged to himself. "The incantation still belongs to me though," he said defiantly, angered and resentful, believing that as long as he didn't speak, the other would have no way to deal with him. However, it was this very action that made Ao Bing completely lose patience. "I tried to negotiate with you politely, but you insist on looking down on me. You think I have no way to deal with you, don't you?" He strode forward, squatted down and grabbed Yinsha's head, forcing him to look into his eyes. "Since you can't see the situation clearly, then let this prince help you." Before he finished speaking, a strange light suddenly burst forth from his eyes. His divine soul instantly invaded the other's mind. Yinsha struggled, his whole body convulsing. Memories surfaced in his mind beyond his control, laid bare for Ao Bing to see. This was the soul summon technique, able to forcibly peer into and hypnotize others' minds, see their past experiences. But as the technique was rather crude, forcibly using it could easily damage the victim's psyche, so it was often regarded as an evil side technique shunned by the righteous. As a celestial deity, Ao Bing actually should not use such soul-damaging techniques. Even if reincarnated, he would likely become an idiot due to spiritual damage. Only after many reincarnation cycles could the damage slowly heal. The heavenly rules clearly stated that deities must not kill the innocent or let souls disperse. But laws are just guidelines, understood differently by different people. When not enforced, no problem. When strictly enforced, even spitting could be considered illegal. Ao Bing steeled his heart to pursue the matter. Even spitting was considered illegal. As a time traveler, Ao Bing had always been a pragmatist at heart. Black cat or white cat, as long as it could catch mice, it was a good cat. Moreover, the Silver Sand King had plundered the East Sea for years, his sins piling up. He could hardly lecture a demon about chivalry. With his soul-capturing technique, he stripped the other's secrets bare. It turned out that he and his brother Jingshui were born into an ancient divine beast bloodline. Luckily, someone took a liking to them and took them as disciples, passing down the yin-yang twin blades. The twin blades were similar to the Ganzhong, the renowned ancient swords. They had male and female forms. The male was called the Sun Blade, the female the Moon Blade. They were forged from the Keister and the Shenshizu divine scripture. When taken out of the furnace, they were imbued with essence of yin and yang, infusing the two sword lights. Once unleashed, they could turn black and white, unstoppable, able to cleave through anything. To match the twin blades. They also passed down a sword technique. The celestial sword skill. It allowed control of ki and flight. Ao Bing smiled faintly, committing it all to memory. Then he released his grip. The Silver Sand King immediately looked like a broken puppet. Eyes rolled back, collapsing unconscious. Drag him out and behead him, Ao Bing casually ordered. He reorganized his troops once more, commanding his soldiers to ambush on both sides of the valley. He had just learned from the echolocator that the enemy was only the vanguard, with the main force still on their way back. The so-called lone sheep was to lure out the whole flock. Since they had come this far, he might as well slaughter them all, send them as companions on the road to the Yellow Springs. What? You say he's cruel and ruthless? Come on. This is war. Do you think this is just playing house? Naturally, one must go all out to annihilate every living force. With his troops clearly deployed, he erased all traces in the valley. Then he sat down cross-legged, quietly practicing the celestial sword technique. As for the rest, he didn't need to worry much. For though the Dragon Palace seemed insignificant, their troops were still a regular army. Not to mention the elite dragon soldiers and generals. Even the shrimp and crabfoot soldiers, in equipment and tactics, could crush ordinary demons with ease. The rampant demons of the southern Lake Islands relied on the formidable powers of gold sand and silver sand to lead them. Without these two at the helm, the rest were trivial and easily vanquished. Indeed, it only took a day and a night before those thousands of demons were utterly defeated, scattering in all directions. They didn't even have sentries or scouts. The dragon troops seized the opportunity, charging out in an instant, swiftly crushing the enemy forces. The prince achieved a great victory in this battle, slaying over 2,000 demons and capturing 1,000 more. Please, your highness. Ao Bing nodded slightly. He sheathed the yin-yang twin swords back into his waist. As an azure dragon, his brush strokes were unmatched. After a day and night of ritual sacrifices, he could now wield the sword arts. With a simple maneuver, he could command the two flying swords, making them unleash sword rays. Alas, due to his limited power, from the short ritual, he could only make them fly straight for now, unable to turn or set traps freely. But this was enough for the upcoming battle. He should regroup with his elder brother Chongzhen and make a solemn oath. As for the Sand King, without any magical treasures to aid him, and besieged by the 100,000 shrimp and crab soldiers led by the Venom Dragon, he was likely dead by now. His plan was quite good, but reality always defies expectations. At this moment, not only was the Sand King not dead, he had even forced the Demon Prince to retreat step by step. On the chaotic battlefield, blood and flesh flew amidst galloping warhorses. The Sand King led his light infantry troops, weapons at the ready, charging bloodily towards the Demon Prince. The soldiers they encountered on the way were deterred by the aura of his previous sword slaughters, none daring to block their path. They broke through the ranks, killing relentlessly. Though a few dared to strike back, they were immediately cut down. Standing on the dragon carriage, the Demon Prince watched the demonic monsters, their murderous aura making his hair stand on end. Now he had reached a desperate situation. With no time to summon reinforcements, he thought the enemy would behead him, imagining the sharp blades, filled with terror. His gaze involuntarily turned towards the area outside the battlefield. There stood the 100,000 reserve troops. Crab soldiers, with bone armor in formation, banners fluttering, yet unmoving. The reinforcements were right there, but showed no intention to help. Who was holding them back? Why was he being abandoned? He couldn't understand. Raging inwardly, 7 aides respectfully replied, "Your Highness, it seems to be the Venom Dragon Prince's doing." The Venom Dragon, the Venom Dragon. Those words, like a sharp blade, pierced the Demon Prince's heart deeply. The mighty rulers. Eyes reddened involuntarily. He knew it was his own brother, yet couldn't accept it. After all, it was his own flesh and blood. While the Crown Prince was in grave danger, when could they send troops to aid him? In the deep ocean, raging currents surged. Marshal Taiyi rode a seahorse, conflicted. Since the army's arrival to suppress the sea demons, This was the third time he had requested deployment, yet all he received was the Dragon Prince's icy glare. Our troops' morale is unstable. We cannot make rash moves. Seeing the chaotic battlefield, Marshal Taiyi realized their few thousand men would be no match. Our army's resolve is not yet firmly rooted, I said. We cannot act recklessly. But as I surveyed the chaotic battlefield, Marshal Taiyi had returned with only a few thousand troops. When we hired the mercenaries, he said, even if we charged in, we would surely emerge victorious. Marshal Taiyi, he had scarcely finished speaking when the Dragon Prince impatiently interrupted him. His expression conveyed displeasure. I respect and salute you, he said. Thus I address you as Marshal. But if you're going to rely on age to instruct me, don't blame me for being impolite. And Marshal, he scoffed, you've lived a life full of contradictions, fighting for the Dragon Palace's campaigns. Even the Dragon King has never spoken to you like this. Never did I imagine being rebuked so publicly by a junior today. Humiliated and enraged, his face flushed red. Since the prince speaks thus, he growled, then this Marshal is blameless. As for today's events, I shall certainly report them to the Dragon King. May His Majesty decide what's to be done. With that, he removed his helmet and flung it away. Then he abruptly resigned his post. The Dragon Prince laughed derisively. He would not let him leave. You may go, but who will bear the burden of this lost battle? Moreover, after the Demon Realm's death, only you, Marshal, can take responsibility. No one else was qualified to lead the troops, he commanded. Come now, old fool, spreading sedition, disrupting military morale. Bind him. The guards nearby did not dare disobey, quickly surrounding and restraining him. Never did Marshal Taiyi imagine they would dare such an act. Enraged, he forgot propriety. Cursing loudly, wicked nephew, your conduct is traitorous. Abandoning your own kin without a thought, you will surely be punished by heaven. I will certainly inform the Dragon King, he wailed, but, before he could finish, the guards gagged him with a cloth. The Dragon Prince shook his head in disdain. Report to the Dragon King, he scoffed. You'd need to stay alive to see him. After finishing the ambush on Nanhu Island, Aobing led his troops to victory. All reinforcements were eliminated. Then he took his men to plunder the island, seizing countless jewels and treasures. The riches of coral and pearls filled dozens of carts. On the way, the dragon soldiers dragged a long line of prisoners, forming an extended procession. Their faces beamed with triumph. Aobing rode steadily on his seahorse, yet his brow remained furrowed, unable to smooth his troubled expression. Noticing this, Long Zhang could not help but inquire curiously, Prince, we crushed the defenses of Nanhu Island, achieving total victory. Why do you still frown so? Aobing glanced at him, sighing lightly. I don't know why, but my heart is restless, ill at ease, as if I'm about to lose something. The dragon general pondered thoughtfully, then said, I've heard the wise one say, great men sense the winds of change. After a major victory that settles the realm, on the eve of momentous events, their hearts inevitably stir. Could it be the heavens are sending you a warning, Your Highness? The words heavenly warning jolted Aobing's awareness. He seemed to have an epiphany. I recall when aiding Zhang Zia against the rebels. Before each camp was attacked, there were always omens, like sudden gusts snapping our sails. Or during meditation, a profound intuition would arise. Even the unflappable Grand Tutor of Shang would have premonitions, gaining insights, once before marching out. His mount, the Kailan, threw him from the saddle. It seems in this immortal realm, great events are often preceded by signs. One just needs to heed them. I've cultivated spiritual powers for years. It's unlike me to suddenly feel so perturbed without reason. So this unsettling feeling may be heaven's warning to me. But what could I be about to lose? I have my treasured sword, my seahorse steed. He trailed off, furrowing his brow again, frantically retracing every step of this campaign, but could find no major flaws. Only the deep seas, where my reach falls short. The sea kingdoms. His face drained of color. In a flash, he seemed to realize something, frowning deeply. He swiftly ordered, all forces, listen up. Use the water escape technique, and rush to the sea kingdoms. Their distance has left them unguarded. We cannot reach them. The sea kingdoms. No, the oath of the 5 seas. Realization struck, his expression turning grave. He bellowed urgently, all forces, listen to my command. Immediately use the water escape technique, and rush towards the sea kingdoms at once. Do not hesitate. A soldier asked hesitantly, "What about the prisoners and treasures, Your Highness?" Albing swept his cold gaze over them. Without a word, his meaning was clear. No words were spoken. The other party immediately understood, drawing the precious sword from his waist in no time. The waters were soon tinted crimson with fresh blood, forming a striking red sea of 5 mountain ranges. The demon prince led a host of defeated remnants, riding dragon chariots, trying to break out like the wind. But each time they were fiercely beaten back by the whale shark king. It was because he harbored deep resentment, unable to open his heart truly. Otherwise, with careful observation, one would notice that the 2 swords on the Sand King's waist differed in form from the true yin and yang blades. Even until now, the opponent's flying swords had not gone astray even once. This awareness of the situation made his plight increasingly dangerous. Cursed, treacherous rebels, all should be cursed to die. With a swing of his spear, the demon lord flicked a demon into the air. Then with a vicious whip, he smashed the corpse into the crowd. The Sand King seized the chance. Charging in from the side with his sword raised, the demon lord was startled, quickly turning his dragon chariot to flee. But as he turned direction, he saw ranks of demon soldiers closing in, blocking off any escape. The demon realm fell into despair, gazing at the calm command post in the distance. In a daze, it seemed the dragon venom beckoned to him, his heart filled with bitter sorrow, silently shedding tears. This throne of crown prince, must you covet it so? A fleeting thought crossed his mind. The demon lord's spirit faded, abandoning all resistance. The Sand King grinned, raising his greatsword high, bringing it crashing down. A clang echoed in their ears like a bell, mixed with cries of disbelief from all around. The demon realm opened his eyes in a daze, touching his own neck, unharmed and whole. Looking at the Sand King instead, he had been cleaved clean in two, helpless, floating away with the waves. His frozen grin still etched on his face. Looking closer still, on the battlefield, 2 streaks of black and white sword light, like speeding trains, colliding and crashing everywhere. Any obstructions, be they spirits or demons, were cut down by the blades. In an instant, the surrounding crowds were swept away. The sea ran red with blood, the stench of iron stinging the nostrils. Yet Capricorn paid it no mind, only looking up towards the distance, at a white-robed young warrior, the 3rd prince of the East Sea, Albing. "Who dares harm my brother?" His clear voice, like a spring thunderclap, shook the island realms. It was like a light, piercing the demon realm's frozen heart. The crown prince couldn't help but be overcome with emotion. The accumulated grievances, as if finally finding an outlet in bloodshed. The tearful 3rd prince, Aping, was like a divine warrior, a jade stone descending from the heavens. 2 sword beams, fierce like flying dragons in the sky, straight and direct, charging forward relentlessly. Those yin-yang twin swords, how exceedingly sharp they were. Even the divine weapons forged in the Eastern Sea could be easily severed. How could the demons of Nanha's land withstand them? Wherever the sword beams passed, countless broken branches and scattered leaves were left in their wake. The demon leader's blood dyed the sea realm a crimson red. The bloody sight chilled the demons to the bone. But in the time it took a sorcerer to catch their breath, the 2 divine swords had circled through the crowd 3 times. In that brief moment, the dead and injured were innumerable. The demons finally experienced the pressure that Gushin had faced, the terror and helplessness, lives as insignificant as weeds. With their courage crushed, they could not help but cry for their fathers and mothers, and scatter in retreat. "Third brother, don't let these traitorous rebels escape to the demon realm," the crown prince shouted as he surrendered. After battling for dozens of days, tens of thousands of elite shrimp and crab soldiers were slain. Only a few big and small cats remained. The crown prince could not help but feel resentful. If the demon king witnessed such a scene now, he would undoubtedly recall his own tragic demise. Indignant and fuming, he reminded loudly. Aping laughed heartily, answering with assurance, "Brother, rest assured, I shall avenge you now." With those words, he made a hand seal, and the sword beams followed his form like shadows, piercing through the water currents. Their speed was unimaginable. Only black and white flashes could be seen, like serpents dancing chaotically, wreaking havoc everywhere. In the blink of an eye, the enemy was reduced to a pile of shredded flesh, without a chance to utter a final word. Within mere minutes, thousands of demons were slaughtered. After all, the void-flying sword was a lethal weapon. And during the massacre, Alping's sword techniques grew increasingly skilled, until man and sword seemed to merge as one bizarre entity. With each arc of the swords, good swords, flesh and blood sprayed through the air. With a subtle movement of his fingers, the sword beams transformed into a pair of black and white blades. Returning obediently to their sheaths, Aping could not bear to part with them, fondling them up and down, as if reuniting with a lover after years apart. This was the crown prince of the demon realm, who drove a dragon carriage, yet his eyes were red and his face smeared with blood. His weariness barely concealed. Forgetting his appearance, Aping felt a strange ache in his heart. He remembered when he was young, his eldest brother had raised him with care. Albing forgot his appearance. For some unknown reason, his heart couldn't help but ache. Thinking of years ago when he had just been born, it was his elder brother who raised him. Knowing he liked to eat lychees, someone was sent to purchase them from the mainland. Hearing he wished to learn martial arts, his brother personally found him a sparring partner. Every detail of his life, food, clothing and more, was all clearly arranged by him. Calling him an elder father was no exaggeration. Unexpectedly, just days after not seeing him, his once kindly elder brother became like this. He suppressed the complex feelings rising in his heart, jokingly saying, "Brother, how rude. I hurried thousands of miles to support you. Why do you greet me looking like this?" The demon prince shook his head, bitterly smiling. "If not for you, my talented brother, your elder brother's life would have ended long ago." Hearing this, Albing couldn't help but look solemn, glancing towards the shrimp soldiers and crab generals stationed far away. Was it second brother? Even upon arriving at the battlefield, he had already noticed the demon tribe was surrounded, attacked by important demons. Yet the shrimp soldiers and crab generals miles away didn't move. 100,000 against just thousands. A single punch could turn them to pulp. But the dragon clan dared not send troops. "Elder brother, you wait here. I'll go ask why they didn't act." "No, third brother." The demon prince stopped him forcefully, suppressing the sorrow in his heart. The dragon clan refusing to save one facing death. Their intentions can be easily guessed. It's just for the throne of the crown prince. Now their plan has failed. Yet they command 100,000 troops. If you confront them now, third brother, the dragon clan's venom is potent. They may kill you to silence you right here. Whether elder brother or third brother, we would all die by their blades. Albing was intelligent from youth. With just a glance he understood his brother's worries. He couldn't help but laugh heartily, scornfully saying, "Elder brother, have no fear. I was ordered to attack the southern tiger, forcing Silver Demon to retreat to the central plains. I happened to seize their treasured blades, now with the dual yin-yang blades, and 100,000 elite beast and dragon troops under my command. Even if 100,000 more came, it would just mean killing some more in 10 days. Worried his brother didn't believe him, he added, "Moreover, I have thousands of dragon troops. All fierce flood dragons, victorious in hundreds of battles. Those pampered young masters, the dragon venom, have only fought a few wars. With just my forces, I can defeat them utterly." He spoke confidently, as if those 100,000 troops were mere pigs. The demon prince was stunned by his attitude. Yet recalling his brother's ferocious might on the battlefield, he couldn't help but feel reassured. The Ryozu demonic realm was stunned by the fearless words of the younger brother. His bold manner left them dumbfounded. Yet, when they recalled the formidable prowess Albing had displayed on the battlefield, they could not help but feel uneasy in their hearts. Still, Moxie held them back, not allowing his kinsman to act rashly. "Virtuous brother, I am not concerned that you cannot defeat him. I worry about the 100,000 shrimp soldiers and crab warriors." He sighed lightly, speaking earnestly. "These 100,000 brave soldiers obey our father the king's command. Just now they followed the dragon clan's orders. In other words, they are our own people from the dragon palace. You are only focused on venting your anger, slaughtering indiscriminately. The ones suffering the losses would be our own." Albing pondered his words and saw the reason in them. Looking at his elder brother again, he could not help but chuckle wryly. No wonder brother is the protagonist. When it comes to warfare, I may be somewhat stronger than you, but in governing the realm and managing affairs, elder brother is indeed more suited. Moxie shook his head, smiling faintly, saying nothing. Yet a profound sorrow welled up in him without reason. If only the Dragon Clan could be like our third brother. Seeing everything with clarity, how could such unpleasantness arise between brothers? Let us not dwell on him for now. We shall report this matter to father as it is. See how the dragon envoy will justify himself. After their discussion, the two brothers forgot about the distant army, using the water escape technique to return to the dragon palace. In the crystal palace of the East Sea, inside the palace, water rippled and splashed, waves ebbed and flowed. Albing and Moxie appeared before the mermaid guards. Upon seeing them, the guards hurried forward to pay respects. "Where is my royal father?" Albing asked directly without preamble. "His Majesty is receiving Prince Longdu in the Ascension Dragon Hall." "What is the situation?" Moxie and Albing exchanged glances, both detecting bewilderment in each other's eyes. Was that brat not commanding the army at Bizan? How did he appear here? With grave misgivings, the two brothers hastened to the Ascension Dragon Hall. Just as they reached the entrance, they heard wails coming from inside. "Your Majesty, the Grand Preceptor arrogantly dared to defy you, boasting of his seniority, unable to accept that I, a novice, could command the troops. He purposely delayed and impeded our advance. When the main force arrived at Bizan, I saw my brother in grave peril. Despite my repeated urgings to engage the enemy, he accused me of being ignorant of military affairs, waving his arms and making a scene. Such insubordination towards his sovereign, such arrogance from a subject, his crimes are grievous indeed. I beg you, father, to judge fairly." "Ah!" Longzi's voice rang out, indignant yet clear, echoing outside. Longzi's voice resonated with anguish yet clarity, echoing all the way outside. Whether it was Moxie or Albing, they heard every word distinctly. The Crown Prince could not help but frown, his heart still pained by his younger brother's abandonment in the face of death. Yet hearing these words now, he could not help but feel a sense of relief. It turned out the Grand Preceptor had impeded their advance. "Elder brother, you have lost your senses." Albing glared, his eyes wide, utterly disbelieving. The Grand Preceptor may have the capability, but does he have the audacity to jeopardize the war effort and let the Crown Prince die? "Even if I fell, the other 9 clans would not let it go. Mother often says, do not be discouraged by trivialities. He may play with fire, but, when faced with matters of grave importance, who would dare act recklessly?" Albing spoke rapidly, not mincing words in the slightest. Hearing this, the demonic realm did not grow angry, only biting their lips in silent dejection. "The third prince, I raised him myself. Yet is the second prince of the Dragon Clan not also family? There is a saying that brothers are like limbs. If it were possible, who would wish to sever their own limbs with their own hands?" Detecting his hesitation, Albing sighed lightly. Born in troubled times, he had seen enough of fraternal strife and power struggles. Not to mention the vast domain of the East Sea, even in modern civilized society. A simple acre of land could turn brothers against each other. The saying goes to hesitate and be consumed by the ensuing chaos. Since elder brother cannot bring himself to act, then allow your younger brother to open your path once more. With firm resolve in his heart, without waiting for the Dragon King summons, he strode directly into the palace, jeering. "Second brother, my good second brother, I wondered why a single sword stroke could not halt the enemy's advance. Turns out you had fled and hidden in the Dragon Palace." His mocking voice swept into the Dragon Court like a cold wind, causing the Dragon Clan to shudder. Their faces paling, raising their heads, they saw Albing's menacing expression, Moxie's gaze ambiguous. The two strode in together, and in an instant, "Dragon, you froze," appalled. He blurted out on the spot, crying out in alarm, "Elder brother, you are unharmed." "That is such a relief." Moxie stared blankly, blinking at the familiar yet strange scene before him. He remained silent. Albing scoffed coldly. "If you truly wished elder brother well, why did you delay and impede our advance?" Longzi's expression was one of outrage, as if gravely insulted, his face flushing red with agitation. "It was not by my command. It was the Grand Preceptor." "The Grand Preceptor?" He did not finish his words, before the third prince interjected. "You place all blame on him? How utterly shameless of you. Dare you come forth and face him? He has already committed suicide in a drunken haze." "Ha ha!" Albing laughed derisively, enraged. "I suspect you had him silenced prematurely." "Nonsense!" The Dragon Clan's eyes widened, a look of aggrieved dismay, turning to face Egwene. At that moment, his acting skills were fully vindicated. "Father King, my third brother and I bear no grudge. Yet he dares to slander me so. I beg Father King to judge between us. Judge what, exactly? The Dragon King frowned deeply, not speaking lightly. He too had just heard from Long Du that the Grand Preceptor had overstepped, relying on age and status. He had deliberately delayed the war effort, as ruler and subject for many years. Igwang's first reaction was, of course, disbelief. Yet his own son spoke so insistently, as if it were fact, that even this father could not help but doubt. Before he could make sense of the situation, Boxy and Albing suddenly appeared, causing matters to take another turn. Thus, he wisely refrained from rash judgment, instead asking what had truly transpired. Speak, one at a time. The dragon calf stepped forward to defend himself. But Aguang shook his head. The other party had already said their piece. Now he wished to hear Albing's side. Thus, he stopped him. Let your third brother speak first. The dragon clan could only step back, resentful. Returning to his original place, he watched his younger brother nervously. In truth, as soon as he saw Albing appear on the battlefield, he had a foreboding sense that the plan would go awry. For with the third prince present, the demonic realm could not perish at Jinsh's hands. Thus, the war effort was inevitably delayed. The demonic realm did not die, and to extricate himself from this incident in time, he had to strike first, shifting the blame elsewhere.